Hola muchachos, ¿qué tal? Buenos días. Aquí tienen el horario para hoy, martes, el 25 de febrero. Your learning target for today as we wrap up Lección 2 is to describe your ideal city and or community. Your warm-up question for today, ¿qué quieres hacer durante las vacaciones de primavera? What do you want to do during spring break? Make 3 nosotros commands, whether that's to you and your friends or to you and your family, for things, suggestions that you'd like to do together during the spring break. Utilize the notes on page 70 for how to create nosotros commands. Identify 3 infinitives, 3 activities, things you'd like to do during the break. Conjugate those verbs in the nosotros command form, or make negative commands to say what you don't want to do during the spring break. Magic number for that one, 3. All right, due today is the past participles as adjectives worksheet, going over the notes that we went over last class. You can watch the detailed video instructions here for how to complete that assignment. You can find that assignment right here, which will break that down. So that's for homework due tonight. We are going to review the notes on past participles as adjectives from page 73. Again, watch the video to review the homework, and then we'll begin your homework, which is an in-class assignment, the recapitulación, pages 76 and 77, 76 hasta 77. That is due next class. You will have an in-class project, whatever you don't finish for homework, over the weekend, which will be a dialogue activity utilizing nosotros commands and adjectives, past participles as adjectives. So it'll be a little mix of both of the key grammar topics that we've talked about during this chapter. And we'll talk about that final project later on this week. All right, let's go ahead and go over the notes on page 73, 73. That's Spanish 1. This is Spanish 3. Past participles as adjectives. We talked about how to create a past participle last class, that you remove the AR, ER, or IR in the infinitive form. Left with the stem, add to that stem ado for AR verbs and ido for ER and IR verbs, and that ending is essentially the Spanish equivalent of the English ED ending, which is what we use to create regular past participles in English. There are many examples of irregular past participles in English, and you can find those in the middle of page 73. A dozen of those here. There are more than these, but these are some of the more common irregular past participles in Spanish. And then for those past participles where the stem ends in A, E, or O, A, E, or O, where the stem is if the stem ends in one of those 3 vowels, then the I in ido will carry an accent mark. And then when, just as in English, we use the auxiliary verb to be, in Spanish, the verb estar. In English and in Spanish, we commonly use past participles as adjectives with the verb to be. And then, just like any other adjective in Spanish, these past participles must agree in gender and in number. Masculine, feminine for gender, and singular and plural for number. As you can see, letreros, masculine plural, escritos, masculine plural, puesta, feminine singular, hecha, feminine singular. We went over already the past participles, both regular and irregular, for the inténtalo. You can watch the daily agenda video from last class. We did activity 1, and I believe just activity 1, yeah? Activity 1 on page 74. Again, watch the video from last class for the correct answers for that. All we're doing is going over the notes, very brief, that were on page 73. Not going to go over the homework, as there's a video that's created for that. You can click on that assignment here, and then you have a copy of it, and then also detailed video instructions, so watch that for guidance on that homework, and then let's go ahead and begin the recapitulación, which is at the very end of the chapter on pages 76 and 77. All right. There are 5 parts that I'd like you to do. You're going to skip part 5. We've done enough writing for this chapter. I would imagine you would agree with that. So no writing for activity 5, just all the other sections, beginning with section 1. All right, for activity 1, all you're having to do is complete the table with the correct past participle of every verb that's provided there. If it doesn't show, the infinitive doesn't show on page 73 as being irregular, then you can assume that it's regular, and in doing so, remove the AR, ER, and IR with the past participle endings ado for AR verbs and ido for ER and IR verbs. Correct answers for part 1, corregido, creído, dicho, escrito, hecho, pagado, pedido, perdido, and puesto. Part 2, complete this dialogue between a couple with command forms in the nosotros form. Page 70. That's the great thing about the book, is that they should have included past participles. I guess they do it at the very bottom there. It's not completely aligned there, but for part 2, you are using both affirmative and negative command forms. You can go to page 70 for more detail. Let's do the correct answers for part 2. Qué buena idea, compremos los boletos. If you want to replace los boletos, we could say comprémelos. Comprémelos por internet. No, mejor nos pedírselos. So we have an indirect object pronoun, which would be le, and we have a direct object pronoun, los, taking the place of los boletos. So first thing that comes is your indirect object pronoun. Second thing that would come is your direct object pronoun. And then because this is a negative command, the third thing that would come is your verb in the nosotros command form. So, no mejor se los pedimos. Excuse me. Se los pidamos. P-I-D-A-M-O-S would be the verb pedir in the nosotros command form. No, mejor se lo pidamos a mi prima. Again, se technically is the indirect object pronoun le, in accordance with a mi prima, ella, to her, le. And then los is your direct object pronoun taking the place of los boletos. And then again, le, the indirect object pronoun le, changes to se just for phonetic reasons. Le, los would be a lot of L sounds and kind of a tongue twister. Fantástico. ¿Por qué esperar? Visitémosla. Visitémosla esta tarde. Again, if there's no, then it's an affirmative command, right? So affirmative commands, you want to have the pronouns connected at the very end. Negative commands, you want to have the pronouns, both direct and indirect, separated. And then the command would go last. No hay problema, no problem. Limpiémoslo. Limpiémoslo juntos. ¿Y tú no tienes que hacer diligencias hoy? Hagámoslas. Hagámoslas también. A ver, número 6, tengo que ir al correo y al banco. Vamos al banco hoy, pero no vayamos. Vamos would be your affirmative command. Vayamos would be your negative command of the verb ir. Just for the verb ir would you use present indicative for affirmative, and present subjunctive for the negative command. Escribámosla ahora. Escribámosla ahora. No, mejor no la escribamos. No la escribamos hasta que regresemos. ¿Papel lindo? Pues ¿para quién es la carta? No importa. Empecemos. Empecemos a limpiar. Z changing to C when in the subjunctive. All right, what was that? Part 2, yeah? Part 3 on the next page, 77. Escribe los verbos en el presente indicativo o el subjuntivo. So indicative or subjunctive, depending upon the level of certainty or uncertainty as to the existence of the antecedent that's being described. Pay close attention to the types of articles that are used in front of the antecedent. Usually, una is going to be associated with the subjunctive, and el or la is going to be associated with the present indicative. ¿Sabes dónde hay un restaurante donde nosotros podamos comer paella valenciana? Podamos, subjunctive, because un restaurante, a restaurant. We're not familiar with the location or the existence of that restaurant. No conozco ninguno. No, I don't know of any restaurant that serves paella. Sirva. Sirva. The verb servir, conjugated in accordance with restaurant, third person singular. Subjunctive because uncertainty, right? To not know of any restaurant. Pero conozco uno. But I do know of one que se especializa. Se especializa, obviously to specialize, in tapas españolas. Tapas is a kind of like appetizers, very common type of meal in Spain, to have little like finger foods. Present indicative because there is certainty, knowing of one. And then since we're still talking about restaurant, that's why this is conjugated reflexively in the third person singular. Again, number 3, se especializa. All right, part 2 of section 3. Busco vendedores que sean bilingües. Sean, subjunctive, because of the verb buscar, to look for. Not sure if they exist or not. Kind of like what you used the subjunctive when you were talking about your ideal boyfriend or girlfriend. In your ideal school, living situation, you guys use the subjunctive because of the uncertainty as to whether or not that person exists or that ideal school even exists. Sean, plural, because vendedores is plural. No estoy seguro de conocer a alguien que tenga esa característica. Tenga, alguien, somebody, third person singular, subjunctive, doubt, to not be sure of knowing anyone with that characteristic. Pero ahora que lo pienso, now that I think about it, sí. Tengo dos amigos. I have 2 friends que trabajan. Trabajan, present indicative, certainty. The fact that you have 2 friends that work at the Excelencia supermarket or warehouse. Les voy a llamar. Debo decirles que necesitamos que ellos sepan hablar inglés. And that's because of the verb necesitar. You're making a somewhat of kind of like a command, yeah? With the verb deber and the verb necesitar, a command or an instruction that calls for the subjunctive. Necesitar que. Sepan. S-E-P-A-N. S-E-P-A-N. Finally, part 3, se busca apartamento que esté, with an accent above the second E, esté bien situado, for the same reason that the first blank in number 2 was subjunctive, using the verb buscar for the beginning, number 8. Que cueste, C-U-E, stem changer, S-T-E, cueste menos que 800 al mes, y que permita tener perros. No need to conjugate tener. Permita, cueste, este, all conjugated in the third person singular because you're talking about this hypothetical apartment that you're not sure exists. All right, part 4, complete the responses of Pedro to the questions from his mother using direct and indirect object pronouns. Excuse me, not using direct and indirect object pronouns, using the verb estar, regular present tense, estoy, estás, está, estamos, están. Conjugation of estar is going to be in accordance with the thing, the antecedent, and then your past participle is going to come from the main verb that's used in the question. So, for example, te ayudo a guardar la ropa. Shall I help you put away the clothes? La ropa ya está guardada. The clothing is already put away. Correct answer for part 4. ¿Cuándo se van a vestir tú y tu hermano para la fiesta? Y nosotros ya estamos vestidos. Remember, your adjective, or past participle, which is serving as an adjective, needs to agree in both gender and number with the noun that it modifies. Ya estamos vestidos. That would be your past participle of the verb vestir. Hijo, ¿puedes ordenar tu habitación? Son, can you please clean your room? La habitación ya está ordenada. ¿Ya se murieron tus peces? Did your fish already die? Wow. No, todavía no están muertos. Morir is an irregular verb in the past participle form. ¿Te ayudo a hacer tus diligencias? Shall I help you knock out your errands? Gracias, mamá. Pero las diligencias ya están hechas. Another irregular past participle. Cuando terminas tu proyecto, el proyecto ya está terminado. Part 5, you're going to skip. Part 6, completa la adivinanza y adivina la respuesta. Complete the tongue, or the, what would you call it, puzzle, if you will, and then guess the response. Me llegan las cartas y no sé leer. Leerlas, tal vez. Leerlas, if you want to include a direct object pronoun. No sé leer, or no sé leerlas. Y aunque me las como, there we go, direct object pronoun in place of las cartas, no mancho el papel. ¿Quién soy? A little bit of a think there, but the verb leer, left in the infinitive. No need to conjugate because you already have the verb saber already conjugated in front.